Good afternoon, everybody. Here, Reverend Chris Wilson talking about worship this coming Sunday. In particular, wanted to highlight the sermon and the emphasis of the sermon this coming week. 2 weeks ago, on October 10th, I talked about a passage from Luke. It was the story of Jesus dealing with the image of the coin and the question that was asked by Jesus to those that were giving him kind of a test. He said this question: whose head and whose title does it bear? Was the question related to the coin and kind of dealing with systems that I talked about 2 weeks ago. This Sunday, we're exploring a question of Jesus in the Gospel of John. And it's in John chapter 14. And it's fascinating, the question Jesus asked in John 14 in light of what's already happened between Jesus and the disciples. And this particular question that's asked in John chapter 14 is a question particularly to the disciples. And the question is this: have I been with you all this time and you still do not know me? I've been with you all this time and you still do not know me. It's kind of the question, kind of like a beg the question kind of question. And the interesting thing about this question happening in chapter 14 is if you were to go back one chapter in the Gospel of John to chapter 13, that's the chapter where Jesus is in the upper room and washes the disciples' feet. And a chapter later, Jesus is saying, I've been with you all this time and you still don't know me? I mean, how can you not know Jesus after he's washed your feet? There's something going on with the disciples that they're not getting the true nature of Jesus. I mean, maybe they understand, but maybe they just don't really understand. And so the sermon this week is going to deal with not only do we know Jesus the way the disciples were struggling to know him, but underneath the kind of that knowledge of do we know who Jesus is how we deal with expectations and assumptions of what we think we know. And if we assume something, if we expect something, if we assume something and something happens differently, we're going to be surprised. Or if we expect something and the expectation turns out differently, then we're frustrated. And Jesus is clearly addressing, before he is arrested later on, he's beginning to address these expectations and assumptions these disciples have of him. And we are no different. We have plenty of expectations and assumptions we bring to the church, to relationships within the family, the community, leaders in our wider community. We have all kinds of assumptions, expectations, and many times they can do us more harm than good. And so we will explore that question of Jesus of, I've been with you all this time and you still don't know me. I mean, it's a question of clarification. It's a question of the heart. It gets to the root of who we are as people of God. So I hope you'll join us on Sunday.